Christmas dinner smelled like turkey and betrayal. My daughter Jasmine stood up holding her glass, her voice cutting through the silence. "We voted, Mama. You are no longer a member of our family. Get out of this house." The guests froze. Derek, her husband, was smiling slightly. I smiled back, handing her a folder. "Here is a parting gift for you, baby girl." She opened it and screamed. Everyone was watching, not realizing that my revenge had just begun. They thought they had destroyed me, but they were wrong. The dining room smelled of roasted potatoes and resentment. The old oak table, scratched from decades of family dinners, bore the weight of our latest battle. Dirty plates sat untouched. Coffee gone cold in chipped mugs. Jasmine stood at the head, her face flushed, gesturing wildly like a conductor of chaos. Derek sat across from me, arms crossed, his designer watch catching the light as his fingers tapped a rhythm of disdain. I gripped my fork, its cold metal grounding me as their words sliced through the air. "Mama, we need the money," Jasmine snapped, her voice sharp enough to rattle the glassware. "This house is falling apart. You can't keep hoarding cash while we're stuck here." I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone even. "Hoarding? I paid the mortgage on this place before you were born, Jasmine. What's this really about?" Derek leaned forward, his smile as thin as the ice outside. "It's about progress, Loretta. We want to modernize. New floors, new furniture. You wouldn't understand." I understood plenty. The repairs were a flimsy excuse. Derek's phone, propped against his wine glass, displayed a glossy photo of a leather sectional that cost more than my old car. Jasmine, pacing now, threw a folded paper onto the table, a contractor's estimate, bloated with unnecessary upgrades. I didn't need to look at it to know they'd already spent the budget in their heads. "You've got savings, Mama," Jasmine pressed, her voice rising. "What's the point of sitting on it? You're not getting any younger." The jab stung, but I kept my eyes on the table, tracing a familiar scratch from when Jasmine, at 10, carved her initials with a butter knife. Back when she still looked at me like I was her hero. "I've given you enough," I said quietly. "You live here rent-free. That's more than most get." Derek scoffed, his laugh a blade wrapped in silk. "Rent-free? This place is a museum, Loretta. We're doing you a favor by staying." Jasmine slammed her spoon down, the clatter echoing. "You're so damn selfish. You think you're some saint, but you're just holding us back." The room fell silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. I tightened my grip on the fork, my knuckles whitening. Not the first time she'd raised her voice, but this felt different. Raw. Final. Derek's eyes glinted with triumph, like he'd been waiting for this explosion. I could have shouted back, could have listed every sacrifice, the overtime shifts at the hospital, the college tuition, the car I sold to buy her first junker. But words wouldn't reach them. Not anymore. "Selfish," I repeated, letting the word hang. "That's what you think." Jasmine leaned closer, her breath hot with wine. "You're damn right. You're not needed here anymore, Mama. We can handle this place without you." The air shifted, heavy with the weight of her words. Derek's lips twitched, barely hiding his satisfaction. I set the fork down, deliberate, and stood. My chair scraped against the hardwood, a sound that felt louder than it should. I looked at Jasmine, then at Derek, their faces a mirror of greed and certainty. They thought they'd won. "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "You've made yourselves clear." I turned, my footsteps heavy on the floor, and walked toward the hallway. Jasmine called after me, her tone mocking. "What? That's it? You're just going to sulk?" I didn't answer. The dining room door loomed ahead, its chipped paint a reminder of better days. As I reached for the knob, a single thought burned through the haze of betrayal. I'd given her everything. My time, my dreams, my home. No more. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling their voices. I stood in the dark hallway, my pulse steadying. They thought they could break me. They were wrong. I'd show them what selfish really meant. My bedroom was a time capsule, every corner holding ghosts of a life I'd built and lost. The wooden bed creaked under me as I sat, the mattress sagging from years of restless nights. A single lamp cast a warm glow over the room, catching the dust on a framed photo of Robert and Jasmine, taken when she was 6. Her gap-toothed grin stared back, so different from the woman who just screamed I wasn't needed. My fingers brushed the glass, trembling slightly. How had it come to this? The house was silent now, the kind of quiet that amplifies your thoughts. I opened the drawer of the bedside table, pulling out an old photo album, its leather cover worn smooth. Flipping through, I stopped at a picture of Jasmine at 16, holding a basketball, her eyes bright with dreams I'd helped fund. I'd sold my Honda to pay for her college applications, telling Robert it was just a car. He'd squeezed my hand, his smile saying he knew better. We'd both believed it was worth it. Another page, another memory. Jasmine's graduation. I'd worked double shifts to cover her tuition, my feet aching from long hours on the hospital floor. She'd hugged me that day, her cap askew, promising to make me proud. I'd believed her. Now the memory twisted like a knife. She'd never said thank you, not once. And after Robert's heart attack took him 3 years ago, she drifted further, leaving me to rattle around this house alone, until Derek came along, his sharp ambition sinking claws into her. I turned the page and found a folded receipt, yellowed with age. Tuition payment, $12,000, dated 2005. I'd drained my savings for it, telling myself it was an investment in her future. My future too, I thought, someone to carry on the family name, to share the life I'd built. Instead, she brought home Derek, his cold eyes sizing up the house like it was a prize to be claimed. He changed her. Or maybe he just revealed who she'd always been. The album snapped shut. I set it aside, my gaze falling on Robert's photo. His warm smile, his gentle eyes, they'd always steadied me. I tried, Bobby, I whispered, my voice rough. I gave her everything. But trying wasn't enough. Not when she stood in my dining room, spitting venom, egged on by a man who saw me as an obstacle. The fork I'd gripped earlier flashed in my mind, its weight a reminder of the anger I'd buried. No more burying. I stood, crossing to the window. Outside, snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, blanketing the street in white. The neighborhood was asleep, its Christmas lights blinking through the haze. I pressed my hand to the cold glass, my reflection staring back. Gray hair, tired eyes, but a jaw set with purpose. I'd spent decades being the mother who provided, who forgave, who waited. And for what? To be told I wasn't needed. A memory surfaced. Jasmine, maybe 8, slamming her bedroom door after I'd grounded her. Even then, she'd had a temper, but she'd always come back, sheepish, with an apology. That girl was gone. The woman she'd become didn't deserve my patience. Neither did Derek, with his calculated smiles and dreams of a life he hadn't earned. I picked up my phone from the nightstand, its screen glowing in the dim room. My thumb hovered over Denise's number. She'd know where to start, someone who'd seen the world's ugliness and still came out swinging. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless. I wasn't a victim. Not anymore. I'd been their foundation for too long. It was time to build something new. The Magnolia Lounge smelled of whiskey and worn leather, its dim lights casting long shadows across the wooden paneling. I sat in a corner booth, the vinyl seat creaking as I leaned forward, my hands wrapped around a glass of bourbon. Across from me, Denise sipped her wine, her silver earrings catching the light. She'd been my friend since the days we argued over patient charts at the hospital, back when life made sense. Now, she was a retired paralegal with a knack for cutting through nonsense. I told her about the fight. Jasmine's shouting, Derek's smirks. The way they tried to gut me with words. Denise listened, her eyes narrowing, the lines on her face deepening with every detail. When I finished, she set her glass down, the clink loud in the quiet bar. They're vultures, Loretta, she said, her voice gravelly. Think they can peck you apart because you're old. You going to let them? I swirled the bourbon, watching the amber liquid catch the light. No. I'm done letting them. Denise grinned, a rare thing that meant trouble for someone. Good. Hit them where it hurts. Money, pride, find their weak spot. I nodded, my mind already turning. Jasmine was impulsive, always chasing the next shiny thing. A new car, a bigger TV. Derek was worse, his ego tied to appearances. His Instagram feed a shrine to a life he couldn't afford. They thought they could bully me out of my own home. I'd show them what a lifetime of planning could do. Legally, I added, meeting Denise's gaze. No mistakes. She chuckled, leaning back. Spoken like the woman who double-checked every patient file I ever wrote. You've got this, Loretta. They don't know who they're messing with. I pulled a small notebook from my purse, flipping it open. My pen scratched across the page, the word accounts standing out in sharp ink. Jasmine's finances were a mess. I'd seen the late notices she tried to hide, the way Derek flinched when the credit card reader beeped too long. That was my starting point. You're scarier than I thought, Denise said, raising her glass. To justice. I clinked my glass against hers, the bourbon untouched. To consequences. The bar hummed around us, a low buzz of conversation and clinking bottles. A jukebox in the corner played some old Motown tune, the kind Robert used to hum while cooking. I pushed the thought away. Nostalgia wouldn't help me now. Denise leaned forward, her voice dropping. You sure about this? Once you start, there's no going back. I met her eyes, steady. They made their choice. Now I make mine. She nodded, a glint of respect in her gaze. Then don't flinch. They'll squirm when you tighten the screws. I tucked the notebook away, my fingers brushing the soft fabric of my coat. The plan was forming, pieces clicking into place like the patient charts I used to organize. I'd been a nurse once, taking care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. This time, I'd take care of myself. I stood, tossing a few bills on the table. The bourbon sat untouched, its surface still. Thanks, Denise. I'll call you. She waved me off. Don't call. Just do it. The door to the Magnolia Lounge groaned as I pushed it open, the cold biting at my face. Snow crunched under my boots, the streetlights casting a pale glow over the empty sidewalk. My breath clouded in the air, but my mind was clear. Jasmine thought she could erase me. Derek thought he could outsmart me. They'd built their lives on my foundation, and I knew exactly where the cracks were. I walked on, the snow falling heavier now, each flake a reminder of the storm I was about to unleash. The kitchen was dark, save for the faint glow of my phone's flashlight cutting through the shadows. The oak table, usually a place for family meals, was now a battlefield of scattered papers, bills, receipts, a crumpled bank notice. Jasmine had left them out, careless as always, assuming I wouldn't notice. I moved quietly, my house shoes silent on the tile as I leaned over the mess. Each document was a window into their world, and I was about to pry it open. I lifted a credit card statement, the numbers glaring under the light. $12,000 in debt, spread across designer clothes and restaurant tabs. Derek's name was on half the charges, including a $2,000 watch that could have paid the heating bill twice over. I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. He'd mocked my outdated house while burning through money they didn't have. Jasmine wasn't much better. Late car payments, a gym membership she never used. Their greed was a house of cards, and I was ready to pull the first one. My fingers paused on a bank notice, the word overdue stamped in red. They'd missed 2 mortgage payments on a small condo they'd bought as an investment last year. Jasmine had bragged about it at dinner once, saying it would make them rich. Derek had nodded, his eyes gleaming as he scrolled through photos of luxury lofts on his phone. Now the bank was threatening to foreclose. I scribbled the account number in my notebook, the pen scratched loud in the silent house. A memory flickered, Derek at dinner last week, his voice dripping with disdain as he called my dining room carpet tacky. He'd waved his fork like a scepter, saying we needed modern elegance. Jasmine had laughed, agreeing, while I'd stared at the family photos on the wall, wondering when my daughter had stopped seeing this house as home. That carpet had been Robert's choice, picked after hours of debate at the store. They wanted to rip it out, erase him, erase me. I froze, hearing a creak from the hallway. My heart thudded as I flicked off the flashlight, plunging the kitchen into darkness. The house was old, always groaning, but I couldn't risk being caught. I pressed myself against the counter, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the distant tick of the living room clock. I exhaled, my breath steadying. They were upstairs, probably asleep, oblivious to the trap they'd walked into. I turned the light back on, flipping through more papers. A receipt for a wine club subscription, another for a spa day Derek had needed. Every line was a thread in the web they'd spun, and I was mapping it out. My nursing days taught me to find symptoms, signs of something deeper that could bring a patient down. Their finances were crumbling, and I'd make sure they felt every tremor. The notebook in my hand grew heavier with each note. Dates, amounts, account numbers. I tucked the bank notice into my pocket, careful not to crinkle it. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, about showing them I wasn't the relic they thought. I'd built this house, this life, and they tried to claim it without a fight. Big mistake. Another creak, closer this time. Footsteps, slow and heavy, descending the stairs. Jasmine. I snapped the notebook shut, shoving it into my pocket as I slipped the papers back into their messy pile. The flashlight went off, and I moved toward the kitchen door, my steps silent on the tile. My hand grazed the door frame, the wood cool under my fingers. I paused, listening as the footsteps stopped just outside. Mama. Jasmine's voice was groggy, suspicious. I didn't answer. My pulse was steady, my mind sharp. They'd given me the weapon I needed, wrapped in their own carelessness. I eased the door open a crack, the hinges silent from years of my maintenance. The hallway was dark, Jasmine's shadow looming at the far end. I slipped through, my breath held, and melted into the shadows of the house I knew better than they ever would. The lawyer's office was a stark contrast to my home. Glass walls, grey carpet, the air sharp with the scent of coffee and ink. I sat across from Marcus, my old coat draped over the chair, a folder of notes open in front of me. The Atlanta skyline loomed outside, its steel towers glinting under a pale winter sun. Marcus, in a crisp suit, scanned my scribbled figures, his pen clicking rhythmically. I'd known him from my hospital days when we'd sorted out malpractice insurance for the clinic. He was sharp, discreet, and didn't waste words. "You're sure about this, Loretta?" he asked, his voice low, eyes flicking up from the page. "It's a bold move." I nodded, my hands steady on the table. They crossed a line, Marcus. "I'm taking back what's mine." He leaned back, tapping the pen against his chin. "All right. Let's start with the will. You want Jasmine out?" Completely. Completely. The word felt heavy. Final. A pang of guilt hit me. Jasmine was still my daughter, still the girl who'd once clung to my hand at the fair. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd spat in my face. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the papers Marcus slid toward me. The first was a revised will, naming a local charity as my beneficiary. The house, my savings, everything. Jasmine and Derek wouldn't see a dime. I read it carefully, my old nursing habits kicking in, checking every detail, every clause. It was airtight, just as I'd wanted. I signed, the pen scratch a quiet victory. The second document was a bank form, freezing the joint account. Jasmine still used a relic from when I'd helped her buy her first car. She'd never bothered to close it, and now that laziness would cost her. Marcus watched me, his expression unreadable. "You're cutting deep, Loretta. They'll feel this." "They should have thought of that before," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. I pulled out my phone, dialing the bank. A quick conversation, a few codes, and the account was locked. Jasmine wouldn't know until she tried to use it, and I could already imagine her panic. We moved to the house next. Marcus suggested a trust, putting the property out of Jasmine's reach. They can't force a sale if you're the sole trustee, he explained, scribbling notes. And if they try to push you out, this gives you legal ground to stand on. I nodded, signing where he pointed. The house was my last bastion, the one thing I'd built that still stood strong. I'd poured my life into it, every nail, every shingle. And I'd be damned if they turned it into their personal ATM. The pen felt like a hammer, sealing their fate with each stroke. Marcus stacked the papers, his tone softening. You okay, Loretta? This isn't easy, I know. I looked at him, my jaw tight. It's necessary. They made their choice. He didn't push. We shook hands, and I tucked the folder under my arm, the weight of it grounding me. As I stepped toward the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen, Jasmine's name, a missed call. My pulse quickened, but I didn't answer. She was already feeling the ground shift, even if she didn't know why. The office door closed softly behind me, the city's hum swallowing the sound. I stood on the sidewalk, the wind biting through my coat. Snowflakes dusted my shoulders, melting into the wool. The folder in my hand was a shield, a weapon, a map to justice. Jasmine's call meant she was rattled, and that was just the start. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, ignoring the second buzz. Let her squirm. I had work to do. The living room glowed with the flicker of the TV, some reality show droning in the background. Jasmine paced, her phone clutched like a lifeline, the screen's light casting shadows across her face. Derek lounged on the leather couch, legs crossed, his calm a stark contrast to her fury. I stood just outside, hidden in the kitchen's darkness, the door cracked open. My phone was in my hand, recording every word, every shout. They didn't know I was listening. Didn't know the ground was crumbling beneath them. You see this? Jasmine thrust her phone toward Derek, her voice cracking. The account's frozen. I tried to pay the car loan, and it bounced. Bounced. Derek raised an eyebrow, his tone cool. Calm down, Jasmine. It's probably a glitch. Call the bank. I did. She flung a magazine onto the floor, its pages splaying across the rug. They said it's locked by the primary holder. That's Mama. Derek. She did this. I pressed closer to the door, my knuckles white around the phone. The bank had worked fast, just as I'd hoped. Jasmine's anger was raw, unfiltered, but it was Derek's reaction I watched for. He shifted, his manicured nails tapping the couch. Your mother? Why would she bother? Because she's spiteful, Jasmine snapped, pacing faster. She's been sulking since we asked for the repair money. You heard her. She thinks she owns us. Derek's lips curved, a slow, calculating smile. Then maybe it's time she leaves. This house is too big for her anyway. We could sell it, move somewhere better. Somewhere modern. My chest tightened, but I kept still, the phone steady. Sell my house. The one I built with Robert, where we'd raised Jasmine, where his laughter still echoed in the walls. They weren't just greedy, they were ruthless. I forced my breathing to slow, my mind clicking through their words, filing them away. Every syllable was evidence. Fuel for the fire I was stoking. Jasmine stopped pacing, her shoulders slumping. You think we can just kick her out? Derek leaned forward, his voice low, conspiratorial. She's old, Jasmine. Vulnerable. We'll say it's for her own good. Find her a nice little apartment somewhere cheap. The house stays with us. It's only fair. Fair. The word burned, but I didn't move. My thumb hovered over the phone, the recording ticking on. They were plotting right in front of me, oblivious to the noose tightening around them. I'd known they were selfish, but this was a new low. My home, my life, reduced to a stepping stone for their ambitions. Jasmine hesitated, running a hand through her hair. She won't go quietly. You know how stubborn she is. Then we make her, Derek said, his voice sharp now. We'll talk to a lawyer, figure out our options. She can't stay here forever, dragging us down with her. The TV flickered, a laugh track jarring against the tension. I eased back, my boots silent on the tile. The door's shadow hid me as Derek stood, crossing to the window to check the lock. He was thorough, I'd give him that. But not thorough enough. My phone vibrated faintly as the recording saved, their voices trapped in its memory. I slipped into the kitchen, my heart pounding, but my mind clear. They thought they could outmaneuver me, erase me from my own life. But they just handed me everything I needed. Their plan was reckless, sloppy, built on arrogance. I'd use it, turn it against them, let their own words dig the grave they thought was mine. The kitchen door clicked shut behind me, the sound swallowed by the house's silence. I stood in the dark, the phone warm in my hand. They were plotting a war they couldn't win. And I was ready to strike back. The new lock on my front door gleamed under the porch light, its brass surface mocking me. My key, worn from years of use, didn't fit. I stood on the stoop, my breath clouding in the frigid air, snowflakes catching in the folds of my old coat. The house, my house, felt like a stranger's now. Jasmine and Derek had moved fast, faster than I'd expected. I turned the key again, the metal scraping uselessly. A cold knot tightened in my chest. They weren't just fighting back. They were trying to erase me. I stepped back, scanning the windows. The living room was dark, curtains drawn, but I knew they were inside, probably gloating. Earlier that day, I'd overheard snippets of their plan from Kevin's voicemail. Jasmine and Derek had hired a lawyer, claiming I was unstable, unfit to manage my own affairs. They'd spread the story to relatives, painting me as a senile old woman who'd lost her grip. Now this lock. It wasn't just a barrier. It was a declaration of war. I circled the house, my boots crunching through the snow. The side door was locked, too, its new deadbolt as unyielding as the front. My fingers brushed the door frame, remembering the summer I painted it with Robert, his laughter mixing with the smell of fresh paint. That memory stung, but I shoved it down. Sentiment wouldn't help me now. I needed a way in, or at least a way to turn this against them. Inside, I imagined Jasmine pacing, her voice sharp as she barked at their lawyer. I'd seen her like this before, red-faced, gesturing wildly, always needing to be the loudest in the room. Derek would be calmer, his words precise, twisting the narrative to make their betrayal sound noble. I could almost hear him. It's for her own good. She can't live alone anymore. The thought made my jaw clench. They didn't know me at all. I pulled out my phone, the screen's glow harsh against the night. Denise's number was at the top of my recent calls. I dialed, keeping my voice low as I leaned against the garage. They changed the locks, I said when she picked up. And they're telling everyone I'm crazy. Denise's laugh was rough, unamused. Bold move for a couple of amateurs. You got a plan. Working on it, I said, my eyes on the house. They're digging their own grave. I just need to push. Don't let them rattle you, she warned. They're scared. That's why they're pulling this stunt. Scared or not, they'd crossed a line. I hung up, slipping the phone into my pocket. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the yard in silence. I walked to the back door, testing the knob out of habit. Locked, of course. But as I turned away, my phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. Loretta, what's going on? Jasmine says you're not well. Call me. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. They'd gotten to Kevin too, spinning their lies to anyone who'd listen. The sting of betrayal deepened, but it wasn't despair. It was fuel. They thought they could isolate me, turn my own family against me. They'd underestimated how far I'd go to protect what was mine. I pocketed the phone and headed down the driveway, the snow muffling my steps. The street was quiet, Christmas lights blinking on neighboring houses, their warmth a cruel contrast to the cold radiating from my own. I stopped at the curb, glancing back at the locked door. They thought they'd won this round, thought they'd boxed me out. But I'd built that house, every beam and nail, and I knew its secrets better than they ever would. Let them gloat. I'd find my way back in. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and cinnamon, its wooden tables cluttered with holiday shoppers' bags. I sat near the window, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug, the steam rising in lazy curls. Across from me, Charles fidgeted with his spoon, his grey sweater a contrast to the bright scarves around us. He'd been Robert's friend for decades, one of the few who still checked on me after the funeral. Now his eyes were wide with worry, his voice barely above a whisper as he leaned closer. "Loretta, I heard something you need to know," he said, glancing around like someone might overhear. "Jasmine and Derek are planning a big Christmas dinner. They've invited the whole family. Kevin, your cousins, everyone. They're going to make an announcement." I sipped my coffee, keeping my face neutral. What kind of announcement? Charles hesitated, his spoon clinking against his cup. "They're saying you're unfit, that you've lost control of the house, your finances. They want to declare you incompetent, maybe even push for guardianship. They're using the dinner to get everyone on their side." The words hit like a punch, but I didn't flinch. I set the mug down, its base scraping the table, and leaned back. So that was their game. A public humiliation, dressed up as concern, to strip me of everything. I could picture it, Jasmine raising a glass, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. Derek nodding along, his smile sharp as a blade. The family would be shocked, maybe even convinced, especially after the rumors they'd already spread. "How'd you hear this?" I asked, my tone calm despite the fire in my chest. "Kevin mentioned it," Charles said, his voice dropping lower. "He's worried, but Jasmine's got him half convinced you're not yourself. Derek's been calling everyone, saying you're a danger to yourself." "It's awful, Loretta." I nodded, pulling out my phone and opening the Notes app. My thumbs moved quickly, jotting down the details. Christmas dinner. Family. Announcement. Guardianship. Each word was a piece of their plan, and I was already turning it over in my mind, looking for cracks. They thought they could ambush me, use the holiday's warmth to mask their betrayal. But they'd just given me an opening, a stage to flip their script. Charles watched me, his brow furrowed. "You're not surprised, are you?" "I'm not," I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "They've been building to this. I just didn't expect them to play so dirty." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine. "What are you going to do? You can't let them get away with this." I met his gaze, my jaw tight. "I won't. They're counting on me to crumble. They'll get a surprise instead." Charles's eyes softened, but he didn't press. He knew me well enough to trust I'd handle it. I stood, tossing a few bills on the table, and grabbed my coat. The cafe door jingled as I stepped outside, the cold biting at my face. Snow dusted the sidewalk, clinging to my boots as I walked. My phone buzzed again, another message from Kevin, probably more questions I wouldn't answer. I ignored it, my mind racing. The Christmas dinner was their trap, but it could be mine too. They wanted a spectacle, a moment to cement their victory. I'd give them one, just not the kind they expected. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the snow. I checked my notes again, the words glowing on the screen. They'd opened a door to their own downfall, and I was ready to step through. The lawyer's office was a fortress of glass and steel, its air thick with the hum of efficiency. I sat across from Marcus, my folder open on the polished table, papers spread like a battle map. Marcus adjusted his glasses, scanning the documents I'd prepared. Eviction notices for Jasmine and Derek, a court order to freeze their shared accounts, and a list of their debts, meticulously cross-referenced. My nursing precision had served me well. Every detail accounted for, every loophole sealed. "This is ironclad, Loretta," Marcus said, his voice clipped but approving. "The eviction notice is legal, backed by the trust you set up. They'll have 30 days to vacate once it's served. And the account freeze, effective immediately. You've got them cornered. I nodded, signing the final page. The pen's weight felt like a gavel, each stroke a step closer to justice. And the evidence? I asked, tapping the folder. Inside were recordings, bank statements, even screenshots of Derek's texts to relatives, all proving their intent to defraud me. I'd spent nights compiling it, my dining room table a war room of receipts and notes. Marcus slid the folder into his briefcase. More than enough. If they try to fight, this will bury them in court. You've done your homework. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. Homework. That's what it felt like, methodical, relentless, the way I'd once tackled patient charts. But this wasn't about healing. It was about tearing down the lies Jasmine and Derek had built around my life. The thought of my daughter, once small enough to fit in my arms, now scheming to rob me, brought a familiar ache. I pushed it down. Regret wouldn't finish this. Next stop was the bank, a sterile box in the mall's heart, its grey walls lined with posters about savings plans. The young banker, his tie slightly crooked, typed furiously as I confirmed the freeze on Jasmine's accounts. All set, Ms. Williams, he said, his voice nervous, like he sensed the weight of what I was doing. I thanked him, tucking the confirmation slip into my folder. The numbers were locked now. No more designer bags for Derek. No more reckless loans for Jasmine. Back in Marcus's office, we finalized the last piece, a letter to serve at the Christmas dinner, outlining their eviction and the consequences of their actions. I slipped it into a plain envelope, its edges crisp, and placed it in my purse. The folder inside held everything. Their debts, their lies, their recorded plot to oust me. It was my ace, ready to be played when the moment came. Marcus stood, offering his hand. You're ready, Loretta. They won't see this coming. I shook his hand, my grip firm. They never did. Outside, the bank's glass doors swung shut behind me, the sound swallowed by the mall's holiday buzz. Shoppers hurried past, arms full of gift bags, while Christmas lights twinkled above. I stopped, my purse heavy in my hand, and looked at the decorations. They reminded me of Robert, how he'd hang lights on our porch every December. The memory softened me for a moment, but only a moment. Jasmine had chosen her path, and I'd chosen mine. Snow fell as I stepped into the parking lot, dusting my coat. My breath clouded in the air, but my mind was clear. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, the dinner, their grand stage. They thought they'd humiliate me, rally the family to their side. But I had the folder, the letter, the truth. The lights blinked on, their glow reflecting off the snow. I tightened my grip on the purse. Let them set the table. I'd bring the reckoning. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the scent of roasted turkey and pine mingling in the air. The old oak table was draped in a white cloth, set with Robert's china, each plate a silent nod to better days. Relatives and friends filled the chairs. Kevin, my cousins, a few neighbors, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease. Jasmine stood at the head, a wineglass in hand, her smile as polished as the new bracelet on her wrist. Derek sat beside her, his posture perfect, his eyes glinting with quiet triumph. I sat opposite, my hands folded, a plain folder tucked beneath my chair. They thought this was their moment. They were wrong. Jasmine cleared her throat, the room falling silent except for the faint clink of forks. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice loud, practiced. This Christmas is special. It's about family, about moving forward. But there's something we need to address. I watched her, my face calm, though my pulse thudded. The folder under my chair felt heavy, its contents a blade I'd honed for weeks. Jasmine's gaze flicked to me, a flash of disdain crossing her features. She raised her glass higher, her tone hardening. Mama, we've talked about this. You're not well. This house, this life, it's too much for you. We've voted as a family. You're no longer part of it. It's time for you to leave. A gasp rippled through the room. Kevin's hand flew to his mouth, and my cousin Tom leaned forward, frowning. Derek's smile widened, thin and sharp, as he nodded in agreement. The guests shifted, whispers breaking the silence, their eyes darting between Jasmine and me. They'd heard the rumors, Jasmine's lies about my instability, and now they waited for my collapse. I stood, slow and deliberate, my chair scraping the hardwood. Every eye was on me, the air thick with expectation. "Is that so, Jasmine?" I said, my voice steady, almost soft. "You've decided I'm done?" She smirked, emboldened. "It's for your own good, Mama. You'll thank us later." I reached under the chair, pulling out the folder. Its plain cover drew curious glances, but Jasmine's confidence didn't waver. Derek leaned closer to her, whispering something, his fingers brushing her arm. I stepped forward, holding the folder out to her. "A parting gift then," I said, my tone light but edged with steel. "Open it." Jasmine hesitated, her smirk faltering. She took the folder, her fingers brushing the paper as if it might burn. The room was silent now, the candles flickering, casting shadows across her face. She flipped it open, her eyes scanning the first page. An eviction notice, bold and unyielding, addressed to her and Derek. Her breath caught, her hand trembling as she turned to the next document, a court order freezing their accounts, followed by a detailed list of their debts, their lies, their recorded plot to defraud me. "What is this?" she shouted, her voice cracking. The folder slipped, papers scattering across the table, landing near the turkey platter. "You can't do this." "I already have," I said, my gaze locked on hers. "You thought you could take my home, my life, and call it yours. Read the rest. It's all there, your debts, your plans, your words." Derek snatched a paper, his face paling as he read. "This is a lie," he snapped, but his voice shook, his composure crumbling. The guests leaned closer, reading over his shoulder, their whispers turning to murmurs of shock. Kevin stood, grabbing a page, his eyes wide as he saw the truth. Screenshots of Derek's texts, the recording transcript, the bank notices. "Jasmine, is this true?" Kevin asked, his voice sharp. "You tried to sell her house?" She stammered, her glass clattering to the table, wine spilling across the cloth. It's not what it looks like." I stepped back, letting the chaos unfold. The folder was my weapon, and it had struck true. Derek's eyes darted to the guests, seeking allies, but found only disbelief. Jasmine's face was red, her hands shaking as she tried to gather the papers. I stood still, my heart steady, the weight of years lifting. They'd set the stage, but I'd rewritten the ending. The front door loomed in the distance, its frame outlined by the hallway's dim light. Someone pointed to it, their voice lost in the growing clamor. I didn't move, my eyes on Jasmine. She thought she'd broken me. Now she was the one breaking. The dining room was a storm of voices, the once orderly table now a mess of spilled wine and scattered papers. Jasmine slumped in her chair, her hands clutching her head, the eviction notice crumpled in her fist. Derek stood, his face flushed, his manicured nails digging into a napkin as he tried to salvage his crumbling facade. The guests were on their feet, some shouting, others whispering, their eyes darting between the documents and the couple who'd betrayed me. I stood at the edge of the chaos, my hands in my pockets, watching their world unravel. "Jasmine, explain this," Kevin demanded, waving a bank statement, his voice cutting through the noise. "You told us Mama was losing her mind, but this says you plan to sell her house." Jasmine's head snapped up, her eyes wild. "It's not true. She's twisting everything. We were trying to help her." "Help?" My cousin Tom barked, snatching a paper from the table. "This is a recording of you plotting to kick her out. You called her a burden." Derek stepped forward, his smile forced, his voice trembling. "Everyone, please calm down. There's been a misunderstanding. We only wanted what's best for Loretta." "Best?" Charles, Robert's old friend, stood, his scarf slipping as he pointed at Derek. "You lied to us. You spread rumors, said she was crazy, all so you could steal her home. The room erupted, guests talking over each other, some grabbing papers to read for themselves. A child at the far end of the table ducked behind her mother, startled by the shouting. Derek's eyes welled up, his jaw tight, but he kept his chin high, clinging to the last scraps of his dignity. Jasmine, though, was unraveling faster. She lunged for the folder, trying to gather the papers, but Kevin pulled it away, his face a mask of disgust. Enough, Jasmine, he snapped. You've shamed this family. She turned to me, her voice breaking. Mama, please, tell them it's a mistake. We didn't mean it like that. I met her gaze, my expression unchanged. You meant every word, I said, my voice low but firm. You made your choice. Live with it. Derek grabbed her arm, his voice a desperate hiss. Loretta, we're sorry. We'll fix this. Just don't do this. We can work it out. I shook my head, stepping back. You had years to work it out. You chose greed instead. The guests were moving now, some heading for the door, their coats already in hand. Tom threw a paper back on the table, muttering something about disgrace. Kevin followed, pausing to look at me, his eyes soft with apology. I should have known better, Loretta, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I nodded, saying nothing. The apologies didn't matter now. The truth was out, and it was sharper than any blade. Jasmine's shoulders shook, her voice rising to a plea. Mama, you can't throw us out. This is our home too. It's mine, I said, my words final. Always was. I turned, walking toward the living room, the noise fading behind me. Derek's voice cracked, calling after me, but I didn't stop. The dining room door swung shut, muffling their pleas. I stood in the dark, the glow of Christmas lights filtering through the window, casting soft patterns on the floor. The family photos on the wall watched me, Robert's smile, a faint echo of what we'd lost. I straightened one, my fingers lingering on the frame. Outside, car doors slammed, engines starting as guests left. The house grew quieter, the storm subsiding. Jasmine and Derek were still in there, begging, bargaining, but it was over. They'd built their trap, and I'd turned it on them. The front door creaked open, then slammed shut, the sound sharp in the silence. I didn't look back. They'd made their bed. Now they'd lie in it. My new apartment was small, its bare walls still unfamiliar, but the wide window offered a view of Atlanta's skyline, its lights winking through the falling snow. I sat at a simple desk, a single lamp casting a warm glow over a blank sheet of paper. The pen in my hand felt heavy, not with ink, but with the weight of what I needed to say. Boxes lined the room, some unpacked, others holding pieces of a life I'd left behind. A photo of Robert rested on a shelf, his smile steadying me as I began to write. The house was gone, sold for a good price to a young family who'd fill it with new memories. I'd walked away with enough to start over, here in this quiet space where the past couldn't cling so tightly. The sale had been quick, the paperwork final, each signature a step toward freedom. Jasmine and Derek had vanished after that Christmas dinner, their belongings cleared out before the eviction notice's deadline. I hadn't heard from them since, and I didn't expect to. Some bridges burned clean. I pressed the pen to the paper, the words coming slowly. Jasmine, I wrote, my handwriting steady despite the ache in my chest. I've spent years wondering where I went wrong, what I could have done to keep you close. But you chose your path, and I had to choose mine. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I need to move on. This is goodbye. The words were simple, but they carried everything. The love I'd once had, the betrayal that broke it, the peace I was claiming now. I folded the letter, slipping it into a plain envelope. My fingers brushed the paper, lingering as I set it on the desk. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me, a way to shed the last of their weight. I'd carried them long enough. Outside, the snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, blanketing the city in silence. I stood, crossing to the window, my reflection faint against the glass. The skyline stretched before me, its sharp edges softened by the storm. I'd built a life once, in a house filled with laughter and dreams. That life was gone, but I wasn't. I was still here, still standing, with years left to shape something new. A box by the door held a few keepsakes: Robert's favorite scarf, a drawing Jasmine had made at 6, a patient chart from my nursing days. I'd unpack them later, when the time felt right. For now, I let the quiet settle, the apartment's stillness a contrast to the chaos of those final weeks. The Christmas dinner played in my mind, Jasmine's shout, Derek's tears, the guests' shock, but it was distant now, like a story I'd heard rather than lived. I picked up the envelope, tucking it into my coat pocket. The post office was a short walk, and I'd mail it tonight. Let it carry my words into the void. Jasmine might read it, might not. It didn't matter. I'd said what I needed to say. The desk lamp flickered, its light catching the snow outside, each flake a tiny spark in the dark. I grabbed my coat, the envelope crinkling as I pulled it on. The apartment door clicked shut behind me, the sound soft but final. The hallway was empty, the building quiet, but the city waited beyond, alive with possibility. I stepped into the elevator, my boots leaving faint wet prints on the floor. The snow would keep falling, covering the old paths, making way for new ones. I was ready to walk them.